All right, a little bit after 9 o'clock. Good morning. Welcome to the 42nd CALLERLAB Convention in Springfield, Missouri. Today is Tuesday, March 31st. This is the New Initiative session. I'm Mike Olivieri, Chairman of New Initiatives. Your panelists today are Mr. Justin Russell from Arlington, Tennessee, and Mr. Bear Miller from Littleton, Colorado. Just a little background on New Initiatives. New Initiatives started many years ago as PPI, Program Policy Initiatives, which was collecting different ways to do classes, lessons, teaching orders, document those, and put them out on the internet for people to try to use and develop their classes and see what would work best. Since then, it's evolved into collecting and documenting stories from the square dance world that have resulted in larger classes, larger dance attendances, ideas that have promoted square dancing in the area, something that's been unique for recruiting dancers, keeping dancers as far as retention, square dancing outside the box, flash mobs, personally dancing 210 feet below ground in Wind Cave in South Dakota, dancing on top of Mount Evans at 14,000 some odd feet above sea level. These ideas are collected by CALLERLAB and put into the book Winning Ways, which is on the members only website area. So if you can't get in there, you need to create an account, log in, register, and then you can find all those ideas there. There's a lot of great stories and great ideas out there, but if CALLERLAB doesn't know about them, if they're not sent to CALLERLAB or myself, then they're not documented and they're not in one area for everybody to research and look at. One of the things that New Initiatives has on its plate is trying to take all those documents, and we're working on building a database so you can go into the website and type in a keyword, larger classes, dancer retention, unique dance spots, whatever, and those documents will pop up for you. So you can find that information. So if you were interested in doing a flash mob, you could type in flash mob, and those documents would pop up on how to do them and what problems people have run into in the past and how they overcame those. So that's an ongoing project that New Initiatives is doing, along with pleading and begging everyone out there to try to send us their success stories. What have you done that's different that resulted in something really great? Can we get that information and pass it on to the rest of the world, and somebody else can go, well, I'd like to try that, and hopefully get the same results. So that's pretty much the goal of New Initiatives, is to try to collect all those stories and put them into one place where everybody can find them. So with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Justin Russell and let him explain what they're doing in the Memphis area.
Good morning. Thank you. The other thing that we love input. If you have something that works or something that clicks, we would just make sure you put it on the microphone. And I think they want you to say your name and where you're from. Thank you. So Grand Squares Memphis is one of the clubs that we, maybe the disclaimer should be, this is not an active club at the moment, but a lot of time has gone into it. They still wanted me to talk about it because I learned a whole lot from doing this project. It grew out of several things. I had young friends, or friends that were my age, that were saying that they wanted to dance, they wanted to come out, but they weren't necessarily interested in just square dancing. At the same time, one of the things that we always talk about here at CALLERLAB is that market research shows that people have a positive outlook on square dancing, but they don't want to commit to long classes, and they're not a huge fan of the costumes. So what type program could we get that has people dancing quickly without the year-long commitment? The other important thing that I thought is that people aren't really running to take a square dance class. People are going online and Google searching where is the next square dance class, but people are interested in line dancing, and people are interested in general of dancing and taking dance classes. So what could we incorporate to make a sellable product? And so that's what Grand Squares Memphis was trying to accomplish, square and line dancing. So we called it the Tennessee Dance Sampler, and I think Bear has the Colorado Dance Sampler. I think there's a Texas Dance Sampler. But the Memphis Dance Sampler, it offers an opportunity to learn line dances, couples dances, and square dances. Grand Squares Memphis, it began as a 6 weeks beginner series where they would learn 30 calls. The last page shows the 30 calls that I chose. In a minute, I can tell you kind of why the reason I chose those 30 calls. But those 30 calls, we also would learn line dances and some couples dances. After the initial 6 weeks, we would then split it into 2 sessions, which is also kind of like a multi-cycle program, right? So from 7 to 8 o'clock or 8:15, we would have the beginners. We would learn those 30 calls. We would mix it up with some line dances. When 8:15 came, we would stop the beginners' squares. We would do line dances that everybody knew. And then at about 8:30, 8:45, we would start with the experienced dancers. Now remember, the experienced dancers, they only have to learn the 30 calls. That's where we capped it. In order to only have 30 calls, you kind of also have to blend in a one-nighter type approach, right? I mean, obviously, our goal isn't to have mainstream dancers, so you have to do more with stars, more with contras, more with lines and circles. Some of the ways that we advertised is there was a mega church in Memphis. One of the couples was, the wife was the secretary for the whole youth department. So the young people, the young adults. So she knew everybody in this massive church. And they wanted a square dance club within for their church to dance. And so we had a really good support system. She knew a lot of people, and we had a free hall. So that was definitely one of the benefits. We used meetup.com. It's a way to kind of just throw it out there into the area. You can meet up for wine tasting, for basket weaving, anything that you can think of, right? So we advertised on there. We did a lot with print advertising. You can kind of see our logo on the first page that we developed. We used Vista Print for magnets and banners and business cards and flyers. We advertised on my website and then on the Memphis Association's website, and we used social media. The other big thing that we did was we used Groupon. On the second page, on the back of it, I kind of went into what Groupon is, the way that it kind of works. I'll go over that. Does everybody know what Groupon is? Okay, then we don't really have to go over it. But you offer like a discount. We offered 50% off. Of that 50% off, Grand Squares Memphis kept a quarter, and Groupon made a quarter. So for every person that signed up for our $30 class, Grand Squares made $750. And there were people that were actually balking at that. Like, why would we only make $750? But we paid nothing. So if no one showed up, we didn't lose any money. It's not like we were throwing money into newspaper advertisings or radio ads. I thought it was only beneficial. And then I kind of ran through what the first group was. We ended up selling 40 Groupons. Of that 40, 30 showed up for the first series. Of the 30 that showed up, 25 came to every week, or they only missed 1 week. So they came to at least 5. I thought that was successful. 25 of the 30. We had other people that showed up not using Groupon. But we ran the first series was really successful. From then, it started to trickle off. And that's where I kind of lead to the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? There's a lot of benefits, I think, of having this type of program. I talk about the shorter classes. I talk about the fewer calls. So I think there's less pressure for both the caller and the dancers. You know, as the caller, if the club is telling you they want these people graduated in 20 weeks, you know, I think sometimes we're like pushed to make sure that we get everything covered. I thought this was less pressure. I think it's easier to promote because people are interested in line dancing. People are interested in couples dances. And so we kind of just blended it all together as one package. I thought it was a quick turnaround time that if you came out to a class, you can bring your friends in just 7 weeks. And if either you missed a week, or if you just weren't picking it up the first time, you could always go back and start that 7-week process or the 6-week process over. Some of the downsides to it is that we never really were able to get that club feeling the same way that we did in our mainstream group. We had angels that kind of came out, but since it was mostly focused on beginners and new people, it just didn't ever have the same feeling. There was pushback from the local association. I think anytime you start a new initiative, anytime you start to do something different than the way we've done it for 30 years, I think there was pushback. There were dancers and callers that thought I was trying to hog dancers. Some of the other things was the dancing was pretty sloppy. That was one of the problems that we did have. The dancers that came in, I think they were more interested in line dancing, and then over time they saw that they were more successful with the square dancing, and so we did more line dancing in the beginning because it seemed like that's what they wanted. But then we kind of transitioned, and I'd say probably 70% at the end of the 6 weeks was more devoted to square dancing because people were more successful with it. And then the other thing, and I think this is one reason why we kind of went on a break, is that we had angel fatigue. After running series after series after series, some of the angels kind of got tired of circling and starring, and so we ended up just kind of taking a break. It was a hard process for me. I wish what I know now is that if I was to do it differently, we would have a committee, so it wouldn't be so much work for me and my immediate family that it kind of helped me. But kind of to wrap everything up, this is something that I really believe in. I think that this is an easier way to sell square dancing, is an easier way to sell dancing in general. We all have the benefits of, we all know them: entertainment, socializing, learning something new, doing something on a budget. I think this does all of that, and I think it's an easier way to sell. On the last page are the 30 calls that I kind of picked. And I spent a long time trying to decide what are things that would be quick to learn in the 6 weeks' time. And a lot of the calls that I picked were stuff that you would do with somebody else. So a veer left, a couple circulate, a bend the line. All of those, you're taking your partner with you. And so I thought that would be kind of easier to teach. The pass through, the wheel and deal, double pass through, first couple left, next go right. Everything, you're taking your partner with you. So that's kind of where I developed the program. And I was trying to think of ways that mainstream dancers would feel like it's a mainstream dance. But we could do sequences, we could do modules. So those were the 30 calls that I chose. And then we have kind of a mix of easy line dances, harder line dances, and then the couples dances are the Cowboy Cha-Cha, the Cotton Eye Joe. We do a couples version. I think every region has a different version of that song. And then we did the Sweetheart Schottish. So that's what we did in Memphis. It was really successful at first. It kind of faded over time, but it's still something that I think is marketable, and I'm pretty proud of it. So I'll pass it back over.
Hang on to it for just a moment. A couple questions I have that we talked about earlier. Was it primarily just you calling, or did other people come through to help with it? And how did the dancers accept that?
No, it was just me calling. Primarily in the Memphis area, I know every region's different. There's not a lot of guest callers that come through. So all the clubs are pretty much set up with the club caller does the classes, does the dances at night, and so it was me the entire time doing this.
Mike Callahan from New York. Our singles club used Groupon this year and didn't have a lot of success with it. I think we got maybe about 4 or 5 people out of it. How does Meetup.com work?
Meetup is the sponsor pays a fee. I think it's like $12 a month.
I mean, the club does then, or?
Well, whoever the sponsor is. So yes, in this case, it would be the Square Dance Club. If you're a wine tasting group, whoever the sponsor would be. From that, you would put it out there that says you were offering a beginner's night or square dance party, and people can sign up, people can bring their friends. It's just a new avenue, a new way to market it. The one downside is we would get 15, 25 people from this meetup, but the majority of the people on Meetup are looking for 1,000 different things to do. So they want to go backpacking tomorrow. They want to learn a new language next week. And so a majority of the people that did come had a great time, said they had a great time, but then wouldn't buy the package or wouldn't, stay around for the whole set of lessons.
But it's a way to get people there, right?
But it's a way to get people there. And we definitely have recruited people from Meetup. One thing I look at it is like a marathon, right? So we pay money up front, but if I can hook 2 or 3 people to join my club and they're paying $15 a month for the next, couple of years, in the long run, it definitely pays for itself.
Okay. Do you have to sign up for so many months or for a year or anything like that for Meetup? Or
you can sign up for just 1 month if you wanted to.
Okay.
I think they give discounts if you sign for 6. It's a cheaper rate if you sign up for a year.
Okay.
Yes, so if you were just interested in doing anything, it would be free for you. It's just the organizers
Right.
that are sponsoring it. The only thing I would say is that there's benefits to signing up for a longer period of time because as time goes on and as people hear about your group, then they can kind of join. So every time you start a new group, it sends them an email. And so the first month, if people don't really know about your group, then it's kind of hard to promote it. But as over time, I think right now we have like 150 people who are on that email list. So every time I set up a new beginner's dance, it goes to 150 people. It sends them a direct email.
So you'd want to set up something like, if you're going to start classes in September, say, set it up in July or something like that, so people would...
So people would know.
Right.
One of the benefits to having this 6-week series, though, is that every 7 weeks I can advertise a new dance. The traditional model that we see of starting classes in September, it's kind of hard to see the benefits of paying a yearly fee to meet up if you can only advertise it, 3 weeks out of the year.
Hi. I asked Tim Mariner to come in this morning because we had some things to the Board of Governors that he brought up and was really infatuated with that it would fit right into this topic that we've got this morning. Tim, do you have any time restraints? So if we had you talk now, would it really be good? Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And thank you for the invitation to come in and chat real quick. Unfortunately, I'm supposed to be in another seminar. But we were discussing in the Board of Governors some new initiative ideas and things, and we were all chatting about what we've been doing in our home area, as you are doing here too. And one of the things that we're doing is a condensed teach format. Now, you might have heard some of these types of teach formats that are going around. They're pretty much the same idea, is where we wish to teach less material thoroughly in a shorter amount of time. People today can't commit to a full year's worth of lessons. If you walked up to a stranger and said, "Hey, Mike, I want you to come with me, and you and your partner, I want you guys to come out and dance with us tonight for the next Tuesday for the rest of your lives." It's like, are you crazy? I don't have that much time. I hope you do, but the idea here is people aren't willing to commit that from the get-go. They're not hooked. They don't have the passion that we have for the activity. And so if you come up to somebody and say, "Come on out as a teaser. We just want you to come out and do our dance party with us. And if you really like it, yeah, we're going to offer some sessions for new dancers, and they'll last 3 months." 3 months is not that bad. If you say 12 or 15 weeks, people think, I have that amount of time. I'm going to be in the area here. But the problem with it is you have to have folks that are committed. They can't come every other week. A condensed teach format means that we're going to show 48 to 50 calls, or however many you have on that you wish to teach in whatever that tier is. And we're going to take you just to that point, and then we're going to let you go to the club, and at the club and during the workshop series and times, maybe a half hour prior to the dance, we're going to show you the remainder 20 or so calls that are left. And what happens is we don't go by the CALLERLAB suggested teach order per se. We're actually taking mainstream calls. See, the destination is still mainstream in the end. But we're taking mainstream calls like recycle, spin the top, tag the line, and those types of actions that take a lot of floor time to learn, and we're teaching them early. And cloverleaf and those sorts of things are being taught early. And then later, we go back and show what a walk around the corner is, and a seesaw the partner, and maybe the thar families and those sorts of actions at the club later on. For me, that's not the meat and potato. They're not the essential things that we need to do. Head square through and do a right and a left through and veer left and Ferris wheel and double pass through and cloverleaf and zoom and centers pass through, yada, yada, are the meat and potato of what we use. Yes, we circle dance them with grand square or circles, and we can make stars. And that's part of the condensed teaching system that we've kind of been putting together. And it's evolving. I've worked with this condensed order for the clubs that I work at for the last 20 years now. And it works. Nobody has ever come up to me and said, hey, you didn't call spin chain through tonight. You win. You're right. You got me. I didn't. You didn't call turn through tonight. No, I didn't. But no one has ever come up to me and said that to me. So they don't miss those dance actions. Now what happens is these folks that are learning real quick, they're coming out to the club and getting to know the dancers immediately. And they're bonding with the new people, with the club is, and the new people are bonding with the club, vice versa. And they're getting what is the feel of square dancing. They're getting wind in their face dancing. They're getting the gist of most of what we're offering that's being called the most today. The club dancers don't realize there's a limited vocabulary. I'm not giving them the plan. So they're not concerned that I haven't done the thars or anything like that. Now, yes, there's situations there that exist. One would call it a drawback, might not be. But one is that they can't run out to all the other clubs that aren't using that method in dance, because that caller is still teaching star through and California twirls and circle to a lines and all the other things that we have probably deferred for a later time. So they would fall on their face and fail if they were to visit those clubs. But we explain that from the start. Say, guys, when you're ready, we're going to give you a badge, and then you can go out and dance all the other. But they're not going to get that club badge until they finish those other 20 calls. Okay, but we do have a party and welcome them to our evening dance and get them invited and write off their dancing with us. As a result, we've had some multi-cycle approach teaching where we can get 2 or 3 classes in a season rather than one. There is a little dip when we have to bring them in to teach the other 20 calls, but the club doesn't know that dip's existing because they're fewer call or less frequently used calls anyway. And those folks are having good, proficient teaching done to them, and they're coming out almost better than the existing club members, which is fascinating. So they said, hey, they can do a recycle with the boys in the middle of a left-handed wave. What do you know? Okay, and the club dancers are flabbergasted that I even called it that way. They're going, wow, these guys are good. Yeah, they are. But they've been taught thoroughly to this point, and the other material is workshopped later. As a result, we wind up with getting new people in quite a lot. And we've got now 2 successful groups that are using that plan, and we're going to continue on to use it. We had some doubters at first, club members and officers who've been so set on doing it their standard way of doing things are not so supportive at first. But then when they see the results at the end, they go, wow, this is good. And retaining these folks. We're not pushing this 70% of them out the door. We're retaining them and keeping them. And they're going to last. They're going to have skills that are going to last them for however long they wish to dance on those Mondays or Tuesdays or however long they want to dance. Our group has grown exponentially, and Mike has been down there and has called for one of the groups down in Hilton Head, and it has grown significantly where we get Tuesday dances where we have 7, 8, 9 squares now for a Tuesday night. I think it's a blueprint for success. I believe that we've created a document now that anyone can take and modify it as they wish. If 12 weeks isn't your fancy and 15 or 18 might be, do something. If the calls aren't the right ones that you like, then you can adjust it as long as you have cooperation with the area or your folks, and you know that the destination is mainstream. So you're going to teach the remainder anyway, so whatever the calls you're going to use, it won't matter. But all of this material now, for the last 3 years or so, we've put it together in a document that it's been on my website, and it's also at the CALLERLAB website now. And it is called Condensed Teach Method. It's not a program, guys. It's not this is another program of dance. It's a subset of what we are already doing to merge into the existing dance field that we have. Could it be a standalone program? Yes, it could. But that's not what I'm striving for. I'm looking for a quick fix to get people into dance floors so we can fill the rooms now. And if you wish to check out the CALLERLAB website, again, it's the Condensed Teach Method. And it's just another method like multi-teaching method or blast or fast track.
Mike Olivieri, Tim, a couple questions. First of all, you said suggested teaching order, and that's exactly what it is. It's suggested.
Yes.
It's not a guideline, and that's why this committee was formed, because so many other callers were taking that suggested order and changing it around.
Right.
And we were trying to get those ideas on how their plan worked versus the suggested order. What about, have you had people go to class or go to dances that haven't finished the class and get pulled through and did it work?
Yeah, no, I have had that, and here's an interesting feedback from that. I actually saw some folks that were in my condensed teach session, and unbeknownst to me, they were taking somebody else's lessons down the block somewhere else too on another night. And so they were getting both worlds. They were getting the Star-Thus and the California twirls. I wasn't reinforcing them on my night because I teach slide-thus and partner trades first. And then then there were some other folks that I did see at a dance that came out. Now, as much as you say, don't, the club members are so eager to bring them out to, visit another group or go to this dance party. But the dance actions that they were missing were like the walk-arounds and the seesaws, and somebody can kind of guide them through those easy dance actions. A turn through, for example, which we know is just an arm turn action, and they just have to point and go over there. So they can kind of fumble through those things, but I'd prefer they wouldn't. You can easily talk them into what a star is and get the thar and back up, and then trade places and shake right hands, pull by one, take an arm with the next, make a new star in the middle, pack saddle, hand star. So I've had that happen, Mike, but the results haven't been as negative as I thought they might be.
And when are the last 20 calls taught? I mean, you talked about 2-3 sessions a year. Do you combine those classes and say, okay, after 2 sessions, now we're going to teach the last 20?
So those 20 calls, being that they're the smaller dance actions, I can teach maybe 2 or 3 a night in a half-hour, 45-minute segment, or even during the dance as a workshop thing. And normally what I'll do is I'll put a program together. At the end of the session, I know I have X amount of weeks that I can use as a teach mode to show the next 20 dance actions that are left-ish. Because sometimes I can teach more, and it's not 20. It might be 15 that I have to show later. Unfortunately, I get one of the latter things that I do teach is spin chain through. And when you get to that point, they've done spin the top enough and they're dancing swing through enough that they can now take directional cueing pretty well. And so I just say, hey, everybody swing half, swing centers 3, yada, yada, get them through a spin chain through. It might be the least popular mainstream action we have. I would hopes that in some day down the line, we have a triennial review, and I'm crossing my fingers that the organization would have some sense and think, do we really need that? And say, hey, maybe we can just drop this call, and who would really miss it anyway? Yes, it's a fundamental part of other dance actions, but so is fan the top or spin the top. But I've yet had anybody walk up to me at a dance, and you might have the same scenario. I might be wrong. If you have, let me know. Where they said, you didn't use spin chain through tonight. No, I didn't. Oh, well.
I just don't want to keep it from your seminar.
No, that's okay.
Okay. I can run in. I might have told you this, but I'm not the only guy in my area that teaches a class. There's probably 3 or 4 others. And I would really love to try this. But I would have to convince those guys to do it too, because our clubs, starting in December, all the clubs in the area have what they call a class club dance, where all the classes are invited to come, and the clubs make money out of it because they get, 10, 15 squares sometimes. And this is why we would have to have the guys cooperate and do the same thing, And that would be my problem, is trying to convince. And I don't know if I probably could convince him. I don't know. But I would really like to try it this next year. I think it's a great thing.
If I could reply to that. Sorry. Mike, and I understand that's one of the drawbacks. You've got to have cooperation regionally or not. You could do it on your own and just be that thinking outside the box kind of guy. Your end result is you're going to retain your dancers for a longer period of time, as opposed to the standard approach where I think we're losing 50% of our dance. Upon graduation, we lose 50% of them. And in a year from then, we lose another 50%. So you're pushing a good 70, 75% of the folks out of the door. Guaranteed. And this is what we've been doing, the same scenario year after year. And our results are showing us. When we had the 8, 12 squares in the room, we certainly didn't worry about sacrificing those folks away from the group. It's just like, well, so that's just part of doing business. But I think now we have to really retain as many as we get.
Okay. Claudia had a question for you. No? Okay. Thank you, Tim.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity.
It's just a comment. This is Bear. It's more that they didn't miss you calling spin chain through. If you called spin chain through, you get more than right. Boy, we haven't heard that in a while.
Would they do it?
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Bear Miller. I'm from Denver, Colorado. And 2 years ago at Raleigh CALLERLAB, a gentleman made a presentation from Ohio, Dale Bennett, with a different process for classes. And it was called The Nest. And Dale came from a marketing background. And what he had is the simple fact that as Square Dance World, if we have class starting once a year, even twice a year, that's nothing you can really market. To have something out there in the front of the public that you're going to say, we want you to start in September. That's nothing you can really market. So he wanted to find a way that you could actually have a product in your hand that you could sell, that you could start anybody, any week. And that was his goal from the beginning. So he developed a program working with a caller in Ohio, and they have, what they did is they have all the calls. They made you have a handout on it. They have a little bit different teaching order, but they're all broken down by which things you can learn as 2 couples, which things you can learn as you need a whole square for. And the handout, it was my bad because I didn't tell them I needed it in color. But if you ask me, I'll give you the form for it that we've got. But Dale had this very complicated way of tracking what everybody was. He had these big sticks, and you drew lines on them, and everybody took their little stick around with them, and you had them all marked off. And I was like, I can't do that. So we developed a one sheet of paper that I can put in front of me as a caller, and if I have 8 people in front of me, I can line them all up and I can take a glance at them, and I know that we keep them in a group because they're all about in this area on the list. So when they're downstairs, they work in individual groups of 2 couples. You can break them up as much as needed. If they're a couple, you can have one other couple angel, and we have a narrator who has a script. And downstairs in the scripts, they actually have A, B, C, D, E in your home. And then there's occasionally in there where a new call is introduced. And so we've had a training session with our narrators to how to teach those calls. We've taken the CALLERLAB teaching tips. We've had sessions with them where I've worked with them, and for the calls they're going to teach, we actually gave them some experience teaching it. So these people who are working downstairs as narrators are not callers per se. They have a list of things they're going to call, and they don't have to have timing. We don't use music with it. They just have to do a walkthrough with them. And then upstairs, you have a caller who is working with the entire squares. And you're rotating people from the downstairs to the upstairs, back and forth. But the best part about this thing is you can start anybody on any night. You can work with them. They can learn at their own pace. If they're catching things very slowly, they can take all the time they need downstairs, and we just keep switching groups by what column they're in on the paper. If they're in the first column, they're in the red group that night, and I have 8 calls there I'm going to be working on and teaching. They might be reviewing. They might be getting it for the first night. We have the center column would be the yellow, and then we have the green column. So which column they're in is where they're dancing upstairs. Now downstairs, we keep track with this other paper exactly what line they're through, what the narrator has worked for, what call they're through, and so they're tracked individually every time. So there's 2 advantages there. If you have a very slow learner or a very fast learner, they're going at their own pace. If you have somebody who can't be there but every other week, you've tracked where they're at when they come back. You have them right back in line where they're at. If you have somebody who has an injury or goes on a vacation or goes to Europe and is gone for 4 weeks, you don't wait till the next year. You come back, you pick them up right where they were left off. So it's a thing that we can all of a sudden market, and we're now adjusting. We started, this was 2 years ago, we started October of that year. We tried to get our ducks in a row and make it work, and we've been adjusting ever since then. And it's still fine-tuning. I have 2 newer callers working with me. I have Peggy Pingle and John Blakely, and so they're getting some skills. I do the teaching upstairs a fair amount of the time. We rotate the 3 callers. Each one of us gets 1 caller a night off a month. On the Monday nights, we rotate the narrators. They work like 2 weeks. I have plenty of volunteers, and then they have like 4 weeks off, but we ask people when your schedule works. We have 4 clubs involved. One, the first night of the month, the Mountaineers are the Angels. The second night of the month, the Rolling Wheels are the Angels. The third night is Square Halos, and the fourth night is Rocky Mountain Squares. So the Angels don't get burnt out. We can go all the time. They only supplying Angels once a month. We ask the clubs to send their best dancers as Angels instead of the people who need to have dancing skills retaught to them. Because now all of a sudden, these are the people who are selling your club to these new dancers. Instead of being the people who need to go through and hear it again, if you get into a square, I explained to the clubs, is if they get into a square and the dancer can't dance, they're going to think your club can't dance. So you want to have your smiliest, best dancing people be in that group with them to be Angels. And we ask each club to supply 6 couples or so we can fill both the upstairs and downstairs. In the time that we've been going, we've had, I think last count was 65 dancers we've had finish the system in roughly a year and a half. We've had another 50, 60 dancers who tried it, who left, but they came and gave it a try. And they got exposed to it. We've lost different people for different reasons. But I think it's been pretty successful. We use meetup.com. We have picked up a few people from meetup.com. And now we have a lady in the group who came from meetup.com who is kind of uses it a lot. So now she's able to help us fine-tune what we're doing on meetup.com because she uses it a lot. And we've used Groupon with real limited success. 2 different things. We've had 3 couples, and same kind of thing. We got very little money out of them, but we did a 4-week thing, and then they started paying rigor price. Our hall rental is not cheap. We pay $80 a night. And up to this point, none of our callers have gotten paid. That's the bad news. But the good news is that about every dance I do in the Denver area now, at least 12, a square and a half, 2 squares of dancers I recognize from having come through the nest. And a lot of clubs around town, when I'm calling, I'm paying on a percentage. So I know over time, I'm getting my money back. It's an investment into our activity, because without any dancers, what are we going to do anyway? So I have to look at the big picture to know that. And but I'm very positive about what we've done. We've been able to pick up some dancers who used to dance, who came back, and you didn't want to have to hear Alaman left for 3 weeks when you danced, 6 years ago. But to be able to come in and say, here's the list, and start working through it, and we just go right down it, they do it. If there's a hitch, they do it. Usually 3 or 4 weeks, they're out of there. And it's just a great thing for retreads. It's an awesome thing. We had a girl and her dad, and she was 14, but he had custody of her only every other week. So they only came every other week. Didn't matter. She picked up everything in a hurry, and his stepmom is a square dance caller, so he had been around some square dancing. He picked it up real quick. So it didn't take them very long, but we were able to call at the pace they could learn. So once again, if you have somebody who takes forever to learn calls, we have some people who have been in the system for 24, 25 weeks. They're still going. We've had people come in who were sharp as all get out. 8 weeks later, they're out the door. So we use a lot of what we do for advertising for it is just a word of mouth, hand out things we do, little business cards, and they say start any Monday. Give a few little things about it. We ask our dancers to take these with us if they're talking to somebody here. If they're interested at all, say, where would you like us to pick us up, or where do you want to meet us? We'll come meet you there on Monday night. And we also tell the dancers, if they bring somebody, you're allowed to angel them the whole time. That way, if Mike from Club B and finds somebody, his neighbor talks him into dancing, if they come dance with Mike B or with from Club B or a substitute from him, they're likely to turn around and join his club when they get done, just like in any other situation. So that tends to keep the clubs happy. Otherwise, each of the clubs give each dancer who completes the system a free pass. They go out to the clubs and they dance. So far, I'd say about 3/4 of them have joined one club or another. Not right away always, but usually within the first 2 months they've joined a club. And are being very productive. And so far our clubs are real good. They haven't made them into officers yet. But they're active. You see them in the kitchen. You see them doing the work. You see them actually buying into the whole club picture at that point. So I'm pretty proud of what it's gone. It's a work in progress. It takes I don't want to pat myself on the back, but it takes a strong personality to tie it and make it to work it together. I've got my narrators are excellent. They've been great. I've got 2 great newer callers, but it takes some caller with some drive and I see a big picture and keep the loose ends tied in a little bit. But if you've got that, I think it's a model for success. We haven't changed any lists. We've moved things around a little bit just so they fit better for in 2 couples and in 4. But it's a very simple process that kind of meets today's thing of I don't want to wait till then, or I can't be here all the time. We track you. And it's amazing how many people, they say, how long is it going to take? And I says, well, we've had some really sharp people only take 8 weeks. And we have some other people who, some people learn slower, and they're still there after 6 months. But I'm sure you're one of the people who learn quick. And then the onus is on them. And they come in and they make their own decisions. But it's a selling factor then. It's limited only by your capabilities of the learning process of how long the class is going to take you. So we call it the Denver Dance 8 Academy. I've got Dale Bennett has basically allowed me to use any of the materials he's got, including his entire manual on that script. And we've had to rechange a couple. We're going to make some also, so we're working on making some points where each of the columns there's some new material for the narrators to read, just to give them some practice at those calls without moving on. Because we found sometimes our narrators sometimes just keep moving on and don't give them enough practice. But we're working on that. It's a learning process. I should quit rambling, shouldn't I? Anyway, if you have any questions, Mike.
Now, once they get through Mike Callahan again, once they get through the program, do they go out and join a club or something, or where do they go?
Well, if they haven't been brought in by a club, then each club gives them a free pass to their dance to come dance at a regular dance. And then they make their decisions. And I'd say at least 75% of them have joined a club within the first 2 months. And but they kind of pick and choose. Sometimes it's by area. Sometimes it's by different things or who they felt friendly with. Denver is a very sprawling community, and it's always amazes me is that, our club is located on the west side of town, but we have members that drive from the other side of town through Denver traffic to come to the club, but other people will only dance with this club that's right around the corner from them. So it depends on the people, where they make friends and what they found at that point. But at this point, I'd say at least 75 to 80% of the people who have left the system are in clubs. And I say about at least 80 to 85% of them are still dancing, which I'm very proud of, too. It's nice to see them around town.
My name is Claudia, and I'm from Calgary, Alberta. And we teach new dancers for a club in Calgary. And we tried a form of the nest. I was going to ask you, though, how long are your evenings?
We do 2 hours, which I'm still hammering myself about if it's right. We do 15-minute sessions and a 5-minute passing period.
Okay.
So there's some time to socialize and everything else, because the passing period is upstairs or downstairs to the other side of the room. It's not a big deal. But I also like to make sure there's time for social interaction between the people. Yeah. And somehow when they're dancing downstairs and just going through the motions, it's not the same kind of learning thing as dancing in the square upstairs with the music.
Okay. Because this is done within the club, so the setup is a little differently. And that we have a 2-hour window every evening, or once a week, to teach new dancers. So what we do is the first half hour, we dance all together in the main hall with Dave calling. And we usually start off with a Sicilian circle. And as people are coming in, they just join the Sicilian circle, and Dave will teach very basic moves with that. And then so that goes 7:30 to 8. Then at 8 o'clock, we break off for what we call station work. And the station work is now the nest material. So we have stations that teach the 1 and the 2 couple moves. And Dave stays in the main hall, and he teaches the 4 couple moves, which are later on in the nest program. And so we have them for an hour. And we go through this, the narrators go through the script, and we do use music a little bit. We have CDs with patter music on it, and so the narrators will go through the script to a certain point and then say, okay, we've got those moves, let's dance them. So we'll repeat the script, or sometimes there's more patter for those moves. We do that to some music so that they feel like they've done a little bit of dancing, and then we do some more script. And we do that for the hour, and then we come back to the main hall again and dance together, this time in squares, all together. And Dave will call to the lowest common denominator. And it's wonderful. It is absolutely amazing. We are graduating 11 people this year, which for our club is amazing. And 32 people have come and tried it out. Of those 32, 17 have stayed. The others, some of them have stayed for a little while and then they dropped off. Some just came for a night to see what it was all about and haven't returned. So there's different reasons. But of the 17, 11 are graduating, and the other 6 are not, only because they joined later on in the program. And we've had people come from every month. We've had new dancers, and so it's worked really, really well.
What is one of the adjustments we did make in our program is we used to have, every night we have a caller upstairs and a caller downstairs. And the caller downstairs is kind of to be there to be the expert if one of our narrators is hung up on something, doesn't know how to explain something, is having some issues. They just call them over and they step in as an expert kind of thing, which is kind of nice to have as a backbone. And we also used to play music down there. I was one of the proponents that we got to have some music down there, even if it's in the background. They need to have some music. But then we had some bigger groups. We had to call in some extra narrators. We're having 5 different groups around the floor without microphones, talking to these people, and the music just increased everybody's volume of how loud they had to be. And not all our narrators are boisterous voices like me and Mike Olivieri. They're more like Justin, a very nice, just a sweet, but he's that great style, but just talked lighter. And when they did that, then they discovered that with this music and the group next to them talking, and they just weren't feeling comfortable. So we took the music factor out, and somehow that was enough to bring the tone of the room down. We also learned how to get one group in the kitchen with a lady who had the softest voice, and then we had some success that way. But we could move them wherever we need to move them, and it really is working for us, but it takes a lot of cooperation between the clubs. I know Bob Riggs was talking about, do we want to put another one of these into Denver and have you and him working in the South area or something like that? And I think if you can do that kind of stuff, just the fact that you recruit people anytime, anywhere is phenomenal. To say, I'll see you next Monday, that's something you can sell and market. We're looking at some different ways to market. One of the ways we're looking at the pump toppers on top of gas pumps. Really inexpensive thing, but when you're sitting there pumping your gas, you're just looking around. It's another way to possibly hit some things up. We're also going to hit the college newspapers this fall, just before Christmas, as a thought process, because I think one of our targets should be empty nesters. And so if we put these things in the college newspapers as a thought for a gift for your parent, and then have a different ad that would be more aimed at them, like from the Tech Squares and the Stanford Quads perspective. But as an inexpensive gift for your parents, give them the gift of dancing for a Christmas present, buy them 4 square dance classes. And I'm thinking, it may work, it may not, but the school newspapers are very inexpensive places to advertise. Mike?
Could you give an example of a script? Is this something that they go over and over again until they get it?
They just,
like a figure,
I didn't bring one with me because while we're out of town, we actually have the desk going on. John Blakely's there doing it. But it put 7 calls in a row or so to home out of the 2 couples. And then it highlights in red if there's a new call in there. Then it has 2 or more, 3 after that are just using that call in a little bit different sequence.
Okay.
And so it does it and write down this thing. And the first page.
It changes then, right?
It changes. Script changes. And what I want to do is add some more variety to that. I want to put some inputs at certain places where they're getting a little more than that. And sometimes that's the other thing. We have our caller downstairs step in and say, we're here. We just need some practice at it. So he steps in with the calls they know and ad-libs and takes some things and does those things. So we also put that onus onto our callers downstairs to be able to step in and do that for them. But the script otherwise just gives them an order of what to do. So but usually it has 1 new call every 3 or 4 sequences, and otherwise you're just practicing that call and some other calls you've had before in those sequences. But they're very short. They're usually 7 to 9 lines at the most, and they just put you back at home. And I'd be glad to email you and you can look through it because it's...
One thing we did was with the script, we have that on one page, and then on the back side of the other page, we have the definition to that new move for easy reference.
Yeah, each callers has our narrators have the script, and then we've developed the same sheet that has where it's listed on it, and then the back of that is the abbreviated definitions, and in the back of their folder after that is the teaching tips for the call. So there you can easily have a reference to go through, and once they've had a problem with it, a lot of I watch now, and they have little sticky notes on their pages about a little tip that they have, their way of teaching that call. And so my narrators have been awesome because they've gone and really worked on, and most of them have no thought of wanting to be a caller. They just want to help. But they really, when I did the teaching the narrators and how to teach, they were there. They were taking notes and they were making comments on them. And then every time they've done it, they've done some more on it. So I've been very impressed by the narrators, and of course, like anything else, I have some very, very good narrators, and I have some weaker narrators. The better ones I work more.
So as you've seen, new initiatives is collecting these ideas and putting them on the website, in one different place. You've heard Bear's idea of the nest. You heard Tim's idea of the condensed teaching order, Justin's idea of the limited number of calls at a dance environment along with other dancing involved. This is the section, rather than questions, we'd really like to hear your war stories of your success stories of what's worked, what you've done, what a club did to get really huge classes, recruiting, or whatever.
Well, I'm Brian Freed from Minnesota, and actually I got an email from a dance hall or a dance studio that had just opened, and she had one day open, that they didn't have anything going on, and she says, could you do a short little class? She called it a class, but for like a 4-week deal and teach square dancing, because I think we could sell it. Well, actually, as it turned out, she did all the she did up the ad. I sent it out. I sent it out on. I have a meetup that's called Square Dance ABC in Minnesota that I use, and out on Facebook and out on my ABC Squares website, and then we had about 2 squares for 4 weeks, and all I did was I just did an ABC, I just did the ABC program, but it was successful enough so that she wants me to come back, and we are going to see about doing it again. I've got my regularly Sunday dance scheduled at her place in August, just because the air conditioning is better than the hall that we usually dance at. And B, she wants to do it again in the fall, so I think we're going to do another 4-week session. And it's not, yes, it doesn't get, I don't know if it would turn into a mainstream type thing, but we had people that they had never, square danced before. I was lucky I had enough, I had some friends, who came to Angel, who could, I know them, so I knew they weren't going to interfere kind of a thing. And so we did pretty good with that. And so it is just another thing we could, that you could maybe go ask, at your local dance ballroom and, see if they do have time.
And how did she find you?
To tell you the truth, I think she found me. She must have done some search on the, on the internet, or on Google, because it came through my website, and yeah, she just sent me a note and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this?" And what we did is actually we split. She charged $10 per person per session. And I got half, she got half.
So one of the things that you said, sorry to interrupt real fast, Brian, is that it didn't lead to a mainstream class, but I think that's okay. We have mainstream classes all over the country, and so with the initiative that I did, I think maybe 6 of 50 people end up going through mainstream class, and they're still dancing now. But I don't think that we should look at that as, well, it wasn't a mainstream class. That's fine. If you have 2 squares in the hall, if you have 4 squares in the hall that are dancing, I think that that's something to be proud of right there. And that if, it trickles down that they go ahead and move on to mainstream, then that's just an added bonus. But if we can get the word out, if we can get them dancing, if they can have a positive attitude, if they can leave feeling like they've danced and they've accomplished something, I think that's enough to be proud of. And sorry to interrupt, because I know you were next.
I just wanted to go back to Tim Mariner's 12-session, I think it was called 12-session condensed teaching order. A friend of ours, a caller in a different city, uses that, but what he did is he added back in any calls that weren't there, because he was using this as a mainstream program. And the layout of it is, he loves the layout of the 12 sessions. But their group decided to hold square dance lessons 2 nights a week. And so they get people who sign, and they have gotten people that sign up for the 3 months, 2 nights a week. And at the end of their 12 sessions, they are mainstream dancers, and they're encouraged then to go to their dances. And that club brings them everywhere. They travel everywhere around to other dances, and they have had great success. They've ran 2 sessions, 2 groups of the sessions this year, and have, I think, 16 or 18 new dancers.
I'd say we have a few clubs around the Colorado area who we've convinced to do twice-a-week class. The retention level is amazing because they're not waiting a whole other week to hear it. And their commitment level, like you say, is 3 months. And a lot of people we approach about that is just like taking a college course. You're taking a semester, taking it Tuesday, Thursday like you did in school, and you're done in that same kind of a frame of time. The other thing I was going to say, Brian, is with the Nest, we charge $10 per person per night, which is outlandish in the Denver area for if you're going to a dance. But somebody new coming in has no idea. And since we can say it's individualized attention and they don't know any different, I haven't had a person balk about the $10 at all.
That's something that's unique to the Nest too, is now people can learn at their own pace. And we have had people where English is not their first language. And so not only do they have to translate into their own language what we're trying to tell them, but then they have to make their feet move too. So those people have taken a longer time to go through the program, but then we've, for some reason, have attracted younger people in their 20s and 30s, and they've just zipped through the program. It's amazing, but it accommodates everybody's learning pace. And of course, the older ones, they take their time going through the program, no problem. So there's just so many pluses to the Nest.
And Bear, I guess my question to you is, now you do this on Monday nights for 2 hours, and you do it year round. I mean, you don't take, so in other words, I know like this week, you're here, so I take it, the other 2 callers are doing, so in other words.
One of the callers is here, so we have one of the callers, but we actually take off a month in June and first part of July for the state and nationals.
Okay. I was just,
But we do run year round because we don't burn people off because we have time off.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Carl Boone, King City, Missouri. You're talking about the standard program. What do you consider a standard teach length?
Most classes that I've dealt with, if I do them for a club, are usually a 24 to 30 week program. Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Because when I'm hearing...
To a mainstream destination, once a week.
Well, when we took lessons, I think we did a 16-week, and this was back in 1981. In our area of the state, a 12 to a 16-week full mainstream lesson is pretty standard. So that's why I was curious. A 12-week, I don't consider that to be an abbreviated. I'm thinking that's a full set. So I was just curious there.
I think the abbreviated part is not only just 12 weeks, but it's not all the calls either. That's what he said. He's leaving out 20 of the calls on the list. So that's partly why it's abbreviated.
Yes, what I'm accustomed to seeing is the entire program in not more than 16 weeks.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming out today. We're kind of running out of time. I'd like to thank our panelists, Justin Russell and Bear Miller. Appreciate you coming out.
And this was Mr. Mike Olivieri's first time as moderator. I think he did a great job. Have a big hand for Mike.
Thank you very much. Please enjoy the rest of your convention. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Just a real quick note, if you do have any war stories or success stories you'd like to email in, my cards are on the front desk with my email address. Send them to me. We'll write it up or get a hold of you and get some more information, and we'll get them on the CALLERLAB website.